Perfect. All right. We are live with Left of the Projector, and we are here to discuss the 2019 movie Joker. You may have seen it. It depicts Joker's sort of rise to evilness, prominence. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And I have a bunch of returning guests, Hungry Rye, Costume Whimsy, and Smirk Gently. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes. I will say with this movie, I've said this before we came on, is that I did not like this movie when I first saw it early when it came out a few years ago, and I kind of avoided seeing it ever again until just this last week. And I honestly feel like it's slightly growing on me, but I also hate it at the same time. But I don't know what I hate, so I don't know. Does anyone else hate this movie? Like this movie? You can just tell everyone you hate it, and then we can just go off, and then we're done. Then no big deal.
I hate it for what it did to the Joker. I love it for everything else. If it wasn't the Joker, I think this would be one of the best iconic movies of all time. But the fact that they slapped the Joker on it, because of what I know about the Joker, I hate it for that reason. Everything else is cool.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like the way it's written, like it could have very easily been a movie that had nothing to do with him. It could have been a completely different character in a whole other universe. But
Yeah.
maybe because of the name recognition, maybe because there's already an established fan base, they were like, well,
Maybe.
we could sort of shoehorn it into this. And clearly, I mean, it worked out for him. But yeah, no, like I kind of feel the same way. Like there's stuff I really don't like about it. There's things I think they did well. I can't make myself say that I really, really like it, but I don't know that I hate it. I don't know. Maybe a couple more watch throughs and I'll feel differently.
I think I'm on like the same bar. I'm more like indifferent to it. Like there's some really interesting themes in it that like I hadn't seen in movies up until this point. It was just like the politics of it in like a Batman film was really interesting. But other than that, like it's just it is what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a similar sentiment all around. But yeah, I think like the interesting framing of this movie at the very jump of the movie, which I think brings in like the politic aspect you said, is they have like a TV on, they're talking about like a garbage strike in the town, which immediately I'm thinking of like what's happening in Paris too, with their striking, they're beyond striking, and they're talking about, I think there's like a line they said that landlords were feeling the pinch because of oil prices, which kind of gave me a little chuckle. And I'm sure it was, yeah, there you go, small. But I don't know. They clearly, and you said, Costume, this was based in 1981. So again, Ronald Reagan era. I mean, I guess it's not technically Reagan because it's
and one quick thing, I don't know if you knew this or not, but the writer actually specifically wrote it pre-origin Batman because they didn't want the universe of DC to actually overlay at all with this particular Joker. Just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah, like they specifically, I read that as one of the things that I looked into as far as like the mental disorder, how it was going to connect to the rest of the DC universe, like all of that stuff. So yeah, just sorry to interrupt that train of thought. I just thought that was a really interesting like thing.
No, it makes sense in framing it. Kind of they went for like the clean slate kind of thing, and they're going from scratch, but it lays down like a city, which I think isn't that seen in other Batman movies or even in the comics, of just Gotham City just being a shithole for most people, or just not, like America was in the 80s for most people and still is. It's just, there's nothing can help you. And then you're thrown immediately in this character, Arthur, who's suffering, and he's doing he might like his job. That's maybe debatable, but he has fun doing it. Perhaps it gives him something to do, and he's just skating by.
It's interesting with his job is it seems that they hire a lot of people who have more like quote unquote troubled backgrounds, whereas with
Mhm.
Arthur, it's like his like mental disability that he deals with. And I don't know, I was not alive in the 80s to know how it was, but I have worked in industries where they do hire people for that reason and how exploitative it is. And to
Yeah.
put them in a position where they have to dress up like a clown and go and like do work for, sub minimum wage.
It was very
It's
much. I'm sorry. It was very
you're
much
good.
sideshow. The end of the era of sideshow of basically
Yeah.
that industry. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. Sorry.
It's just
Wow.
interesting to think about like how they treat people with disabilities, because that's like the overarching theme. It's a very like overt theme throughout this, is like how they treat people with like mental disabilities. And I'm curious of anyone's theories in regards to this.
Yeah. No, I wanted you to tell us about your theory, Smirk, before we go into like all of the disclaimers of all of the different mental illnesses and stuff like that, because there's a lot of that stuff that I was looking at as far as things that were interesting about this movie. But I really would love to hear your theories on what this movie is about, really.
Oh, well, I mean, as far as what it's about, I really think the main takeaway should be that this is a person who has been victimized by structures that set him up to fail, to be left to the side, to be tossed aside, like trash. But I think the reason people and Arthur come away, like in the movie, with their focus on like the incorrect sort of like like blaming their problems on the wrong people, essentially, like how it erupts into violence, and it's supposed to be against the rich, but even you see like later on when everything's happening and shit just goes off the rails, who's being victimized at that point? Like it's other people that are just there. I think ultimately people, when they're frustrated and they don't know exactly, who to turn to, they don't know who to blame, it ends up being that they just point that ire, they aim it at the people that are closest to them, who don't really, who don't actually have any sort of power in that dynamic. They're not the ones harming them. They're not responsible for their oppression and subjugation, but they're the people that are right there. So like even, like the talk show host, the Murray dude that Pacino plays, like, yeah, he's a dick, but how much power does he really hold? Like that's the person who he was closest to in that moment, who he could take out his frustrations on and make an example of. But at the end of the day, he's not the one who put him in that position that got him to that spot. So I think that's part of the reason that people take it as like a validation of the whole like frustrated incel thing, because that very much reflects excuse me, the way they view themselves and other people. Like this is the same exact thing,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Stumbling over my words a little bit.
For sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very similar to my takeaway of and that, I mean, that one of the early scenes too is Arthur seeing his like social worker, and there's like the joke of the fact that like they're literally just like cutting the funding for like the only thread that he has to like hang on to, like getting his prescriptions. He's like, what am I going to do to get my drugs? And she's like, I don't know. You're fucked, basically. And
Yeah.
so that's really what society does. And like you said, you do go after the people that are easily targeted, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Doesn't he also say something like, "You're not hearing me. I've been coming here every week. You ask me the exact same questions, and you're not hearing what I'm saying. Like I didn't feel like I existed, and all he got in return was medication."
Mm-hmm.
Which is a really sad means of like solving mental health crises. It's just like, oh, take a pill and hopefully it'll make you feel better. Like it's not getting to the root of the issue. And like that's
Yeah.
pretty common today too with like mental health services. At least in my experience. They just throw a pill at you and hope for the best.
Yeah,
Mm.
and that's not to say either that like medication can't be helpful, but it's very much in some of these cases, and in this case, like a band-aid. It's like an individual solution for a much wider societal problem.
Yeah.
Like he was abused throughout his entire life, and he's not the only person that lost their health care and their medication and the 7 different medications that he was on too. He's like, yeah, an individual solution for societal sickness, basically. It's not even really a solution because he was still like not well at all.
Yeah. So the thing that struck me when he was practicing his entrance onto stage and whatnot, that was kind of very eerie. And first of all, I only saw this movie this week. I'd never seen it before. Evan asked me if I would watch it because of the Fight Club one we did, and I went into this without ever seeing any of the ads or anything for it either, just knowing like what I knew about Batman. But the one thing that like really messed with me because of what's going on in current events is the fact that I don't know if you guys remember, but in Aurora, about 15 years ago, a guy dressed up like the Joker and went into a movie theater for, a mass shooting. And they statistically say that these are actually mass suicide attempts. They're fame-inducing suicide attempts. So when he sat on his couch and he went like that, I was like, this is a little too close. Like that was one like moment in this movie where I got like serious chills because it was like art imitating real life in that aspect of how this mental illness and all this other stuff. And Evan had talked about how it leads into the alt-right pipeline, and that was like right then and there. If I was a guy who was on these chats, that moment would be one of those indoctrinating moments for me, because that is it is life imitating art, imitating life. Like it was so eerily and surreally done.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that line where he has
Yeah.
in his notebook.
Knock, knock, who's there?
Yeah.
That right there. That was one of several, but like that was one that I was like, and it I guess it really shook me because of all of the stuff that's going on with Tennessee right now. But like, as a side note here, because that's like mental disorders in this movie are not framed as the instigators for the problem, but part of the overarching problem, if that makes sense. Like, in like Split, they blame the multiple personality disorder on what's going on with him. Whereas with the Joker, he's just not a great human being who also has all these mental disorders.
Yeah.
And I think they really did a good job of drawing that distinction between the two, which is good, but also attracts a certain type of human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was one of the big ones for me. I was like, I don't know if I like this movie anymore. Like I had so many of those moments while I was watching this movie where I was like, I don't know if I like this very much. But so,
Yeah.
does anybody else talk about the mental disorders or not?
I was gonna say what you were saying as far as like the like mass suicide, like the fame with these like mass shooters and stuff. The line in his notebook that says, "I just hope my death makes more sense than my life." That was what that one exactly is what pops in my head when you were talking about that, because that kind of seals it, right? Like it's because at that point somebody has to just feel completely checked out. Like there's no way up from where they are, so like why not just plunge into the depths entirely?
Yeah, and he is kind of an 80s version of what we would see as what our mass shooting problem is now. He just did it in small batches throughout 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could say almost before sort of like modern surveillance and social media and everything, it would be, I mean, not saying it'd be easier to get away with the kind of, obviously it's still like as dramatized as the movie, and he gets invited on this show, but on the Murray show, but he doesn't, I don't know. I didn't see anything when I was reading about the director about whether they pulled any of this from the Aurora shooting, because I remember that vividly.
Yeah.
Um,
Did that occurred to you too?
yeah, and I don't know if
I don't
it
think
could
he
have
did. I just think it happened.
unintentional.
Yeah,
Unintentional.
I don't think he did on purpose. I think that it was just so freaking spot on, and Joaquin Phoenix is such a good actor that like it was very believable, you know. I think that was what it was. It was a culmination of those two things. But again, very much one of those things where if you're looking at it at the right angle, it's definitely one of those things that makes a certain type of dude want to aspire to be like him,
Mhm.
you know.
Which is
And it's
scary because if you like lack the ability to have like nuanced thoughts about the movie, you can see that the people that he targets and kills are not just like inherently innocent individuals. And you kind of see it with like how Bruce Wayne's father talks about those three drunken CEO sons who are like on the train and they're harassing the girl. They're talking about being at the bar with that one girl and like, oh, I was trying to like get at her and she shut me down. Like they thought they were entitled to this woman's attention, whoever the stranger was. And then they're also antagonizing somebody else on this public transit like system. And then Joaquin Phoenix's character, what's his name?
Arthur.
I'm Arthur, thank you. I should know that. We're this far into it. But he's like, you can tell he has like a tick of sorts. Something going on like that's causing him to have the laughing, and then they are going out of their way to antagonize him and then further attack him. So it's interesting, like people would pull like what they saw him do with that, and then like take that person and attack like actual like individual, like innocent individuals, if that makes sense.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the laughing he has is called pseudobulbar effect. So pseudo, PSEUDOBULBAR for people who are just listening. So you can Google that if you want to. It's an effect that deregulates your ability to be able to regulate your emotions. And it only comes out in wild bursts. Some people do laughing, some people do crying, some people do screaming, closely related to Tourette's. And it's caused by severe brain trauma.
So that would be when he was abused as a kid, and they say they found him chained to a radiator or something. What was interesting about that when they have that reveal is that it's like he doesn't even remember it. So he clearly has like memory issues too.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's the thing is he doesn't remember anything previous to that, but he was like 7 or 8
Yeah.
when all that happened. So like clearly it's repressed memories and she just reinvented everything. He's just been such a happy kid, right? Was he? We don't know. Before that incident, we have no idea because most of the time he's not really even genuinely laughing.
No, we'd also don't know when he was adopted. It could have been like that was when he was adopted as like a 7 or 8-year-old. And no, do they say?
No, he was adopted very young. Then his mom had a traumatic break and like they found him chained to the radiator. There's a date on the adoption papers. I didn't take the foresight to rewind and pause, but it was in fact before she went into the mental hospital. She adopted him long before that as a what was it, a baby that had no back, like it was a surrendered child basically.
Oh yeah, it said like abandoned
surrendered child.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned her, like the mother, Penny, was that her name?
Yeah,
Penny being in like Arkham, which is sort of like the well-known like mental institution in like the Batman universe. Which generally also, I'm trying to think of another movie I did where there's like a mental institution. It's another like aspect of the societal problems that I think we should also maybe talk about, like Bruce Wayne's father, who's running for mayor too. And that aspect, I think that like is a cloud over everything, which what you said, Rye, about the like the way he has like disdain for or props up those 3 rich people who are killed and looks at everyone else in the town with just like, you're just a poor, he calls them jokers or clowns.
Yeah.
And so, but Arkham is sort of like this, oh, these are people that have mental health issues. We could help them, or we could just throw them in there and lock them up and throw away the key. And that's basically kind of the aspect of like the Gotham universe of that's what breeds these criminals because they're set there with their mental health issues. They break out or whatever, and then they turn it loose on the city. But it's ignoring, like, Bruce Wayne's father is a billionaire. He could do something else.
Yeah. Oh God. You know what's so annoying? If I could sidebar real quick, is the people who like now that they pretty recently in the Batman universe established that it's actually Gotham is cursed. So that's why even if Batman, even if Bruce or his father decided to just, use their wealth for something worthwhile, it wouldn't matter because it's cursed. So
Curse
that's
of
why he has to.
capitalism.
Yeah, literally. Like,
The cursed is exploitation.
like
Yeah.
what-
Yeah.
Oh my
I have not heard that.
God,
That's
why did they
hilarious.
do that?
It's
So-
crazy, and I think it's only within the past couple of years, because anytime and this is one of my favorite things to do, and I haven't done it in a while, but to antagonize the fanboys. I think that like if you don't have like external genitalia, you've probably never read a comic book. So if you make a post about how Batman is just he's a douche screwing around with money, and like he doesn't use the money for anything but buying himself like fun gadgets and everything, and when he could actually help people, they get so mad. But that's the most recent thing that they come back with. It's like, well, actually, it's cursed. So okay.
It was on a Native American burial ground because we
The
also kill
entire
all of the
country is a Native American
Americans.
burial ground.
Yeah.
It's all cursed.
Like we said before, fuck the bat. ACAB includes Batman. He's just a glorified fucking police officer. So let's get that out of the way real quick.
That's right.
When you were saying, Evan, that that was part of the larger problem about how mental health was being treated and stuff like that, that clerk basically stated that because Arkham doesn't just hold criminals. It does, but he said it also is people who are just have nowhere else to go, and people who are broken. And he goes on and on about all the different types of people that are in Arkham. But just like how the criminal justice system works, it cranks out more criminals than it does actually helping anybody. And those type of facilities were known to do just that, because you would house people who were criminally insane with people who, had insomnia. So like you put all these people together and they're trapped against their will. Their allies are going to be the people who are also trapped against their will, and they're going to learn things from one another. And it's very interesting that those are the villains of Batman. On a complete side note there.
And it's interesting how like the themes overlap between like our like prison industrial complex and how like the prison system functions as a means of like othering
Yep.
like people that we don't like, the quote unquote like degenerates of society, like that are detrimental to our way of living, by throwing them in a place and locking them away so we don't have to see them. But like they do the same thing in Batman, but Batman goes into Arkham City and will just go beat them up. So like make that make sense.
Isn't it just sad when you think about it that Batman is just beating up mentally ill people? Just like that is what he does. He pays for large toys to beat up mentally ill people.
Yeah, and perpetuates like the surveillance state within Gotham.
Perpetuates the police state. Like
he has a monopoly of violence. He is an agent of the state. Like
like and almost worse, because like you could say that generally police are kind of above the law in that they rarely are persecuted for the things they do, but Batman is even above that, because not only is he a cop, he's also a billionaire, and he's white, and he's a dude. So basically he's got it all going. It's like he can just do whatever the fuck he wants.
So what is the other thing that I had on this list of fun things? Oh, so Smirk, it sounds like you know a lot about comic books as well. So do you know the origin story behind the original Joker and what he was supposed to represent?
No, why don't you
Dang it. I was hoping somebody else would say this for once. So the original Joker was actually the antithesis of law and order. He's the antithesis, so he is natural anarchism. He is natural anarchism in its state. So he drives people to do things. He does not actually, and Heath Ledger actually does the best representation of this. My favorite scene when he lights the money on fire because he doesn't care about anybody who's wealthy. Like that, perfect chef's kiss, perfect scene for the Joker. But like, so it's like he is his arch villain, but the reason why is because Batman upholds the police state, and he is the exact opposite. He is the anarchic nature of human beings, and what has been basically turned into everything from all the institutionalization of Arkham and Gotham and all of that stuff. So when it comes to this movie in particular, I was very upset because they skate this line between where it's gonna almost turn into it being a very good anarchic moment for a lot of different people, and he internalizes it and turns it selfish. And that's the other like door opening for incels to really love it as much as they do, because it's all about the personal fame rather than the freedom of everybody who needs it. Like that juxtaposition was upsetting to me because the original Joker isn't like that. He does actually care about quite a few people. He does act, and in the comic books in specific, he does take care of a large borough of human beings in Gotham and make sure they eat and are taken care of. So meh, that was one of my big takeaways as the I don't like its portion of the movie. So.
Yeah. And it's not surprising really, but it is disappointing that like more modern iterations have kind of just swept that all to the side and just turned him into someone who just wants to cause harm and chaos without any real purpose, you know.
Well, they Americanized the anarchism. They made it the actual definition that we use now.
Libertarian Joker, no.
What do you make of, since you're talking about sort of his, like his, like the movement he's created in the anarchism aspect, which they kind of, you could say they are bastardizing it, whatever you want to call it. But in like towards the end, I mean, I do want to touch on some of the things towards the middle, but at the end of the movie, when he's hit by the ambulance and they kind of lift him out and they're kind of propping him up to be like I almost took it as like he's like the symbol that they're making of like their side versus like Batman's the symbol of like the city
right.
of of like their version of law and order of police. And it's like they're like creating him, turning him into something he may not be capable of being.
Like they put the leadership on him.
Yeah, well, their whole thing about him, it's, aside from him being on the show, up until that point, all these people were, very much trying to use his image based purely on him shooting those 3 guys in the subway. They didn't even know who did it. They just knew it was somebody in clown makeup or a clown mask. And then he kills the late night talk show host guy, and that's when shit really pops off. But like they don't know anything about him aside from that. That's all it really took.
So here's my thing, right? Our modern brains go to they all saw the TV show, and but the riots were going on before the TV show happened, right?
Yeah.
So part of me is wondering if maybe this wasn't a delusion. That whole scene where he gets pulled out of the cop car and he's dancing on the top of the car, if that was not part of like his schizophrenia, because there are certain scenes in that movie that I'm not sure happen.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, and the only time they really make a point of showing us that it didn't happen is the first one, which is obvious when he's watching the show with his mother and he thinks of himself being there and Murray pulling him up on stage and I wish I had a kid like you. And then with the neighbor, that woman, whose name I forget, his whole manufactured relationship that they had, which never really occurred.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wonder if that.
It flashes from that to him being in the insane asylum laughing. Like there's literally no changeover, no progression, none of that. It just goes from that to that, which was kind of the same jump cut that they used for showing us the reality as it was taking place. So it was one of those things. This is like a theory that I have, and I have to rewatch the movie again, but I think that a lot of the things that we see and a lot of the violence that we see, besides the 3 that got killed in the subway, I think some of it was not actually something that happened.
I think the rallies were happening. Like I think those were real. Those were happening, and like this whatnot. But I think he got so diluted with his sense of wanting like community and like a support system
Right.
that he lost it along the way. And it does make it confusing because you don't really know which is real
Well,
and which is fake because he stops taking his meds and it
right.
becomes like those lines are getting really blurred.
That's why because like for us, like we would know that he shot Murray, right? And we would know that he confessed to all of those murders. We know that because we were the audience watching. But all of these people were rioting while that was going on. So they actually have no idea who this guy is. They literally just know that he was in a cop car that got hit. And whether or not they're pulling him out just based on his face makeup, which is totally a possibility, or if it's in a delusion, simply based on the fact that, you know, he's schizophrenic. You don't really know. You can't really tell.
Yeah.
One thing that I made a note of, and I think it's interesting that this kind of leads to his unraveling, is so he loses his job because he had like brought a gun to a children's hospital, but it feels like him losing his job though is like legitimately for like actual people losing their job, and like maybe you're just hanging out already by a thread and that leads you into a spiral of all kinds of things. And he immediately is going the opposite way. Then the social services is cut. He's lost his medicine. He's lost his job. He's finding out now his mom is had been lying. Like all these, it's like this. And I feel like that's also what kind of the incel community latches onto. They don't see it as, like we've already said, the systemic aspect, but simply like everything is out to get me because, you know, people don't like me. You're making excuses for your actions because like society doesn't like you, but not the societal aspect of it, which I think was my take for the movie in general.
I think a bunch of times he's emasculated in several different ways. Like it opens with him getting beaten up by a bunch of kids who take his sign while he's dressed like Wino the Clown or whatever, and he's like he gets the crap kicked out of him. And the thing that struck me, which might mean nothing, but like as he's getting the crap kicked out of him, he's covering his genitals, like he's got his hands there. When it pans back, he's holding himself, and everything that happens to him. Losing the job, I think you're totally right, is like a huge blow to what it's supposed to be for him to be like masculine. And also the even his condition, just like that involuntary expression of emotion in a way that isn't like the accepted way to present masculinity, you know, because what are you allowed to be if you're a guy? Angry. And that's pretty much it. Like there's not a lot of other like emotion you're allowed to just throw out there. And obviously we know that's enforced by patriarchy, but I think that might be part of why it speaks so much to incels who like don't have media literacy. But yeah, the thing where as soon as I was watching it again last night, and he was covering his crotch, I was like, oh, let me just keep an eye out. And I made some other notes, but I can't read my own fucking handwriting.
Well, if you're out there, right-wing YouTube, please find this. Don't leave any comments, but watch this.
Come yell at us.
And
don't do any of that. What was it? Oh, I've been a man of the house. I've been the man of the house for as long as I can remember, is one of the first lines that he says when he's talking to mythological Murray.
Yeah.
So it's now you've kind of made me like question a lot of the parts of the movie where you don't know if it actually were things that happened, which I think I felt during it. Sometimes it's like there's these delusions, like he like especially the conversations with the neighbor where she's like agreeing with him about like killing rich people, being like, yeah, that's cool. It's like he's creating these narratives in his head to like reinforce his own, I don't know, hatred. Like he didn't seem to like hate rich people until he has this idea of like Wayne's father, what's his father's name?
I don't know.
Mr. Wayne.
Wayne the Senior.
Wayne Senior is, you know, he that whole like, did he actually go to this party, like the theater, and get punched in the face?
Did he? We don't know.
And also, can I just say the part where all the rich people are like watching some like weird maybe someone knows what it was, like this black and white film.
Oh, look,
It's like
it looks
a
like a
Chaplin
Charlie
film.
Is it
Chaplin kind of
Chaplin?
film.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin
That
movie,
was
yeah.
so strange. Like that's what they all went to this giant theater to watch.
And it was, oh
Wasn't it like a
god,
charity
that was a random
fundraiser or
thought.
something?
yeah.
Fun-
it was-
maybe
it
it's a
was
fundraiser. Okay.
charity.
Okay.
But
It looks like an opera house too. It's so like
yeah,
yeah, it's
Like,
ostentatious.
how are you gonna go to a fundraiser for charity and you're dressed up in like your pearls and diamonds that you have like gotten via severe exploitation of like the global south, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna solve poverty here in Gotham. I'm gonna go
With my
watch this
blood
movie
diamonds.
but wearing pretty dresses that are more than people's salaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, let's see. So we found out that he has pseudobipolar. We talked about his schizophrenia, his narcissistic personality disorder that comes off very much almost as if he's on the autism spectrum, which we know a lot of men who are incels
There's
are
overlap
autistic.
there. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that covers all of the disorders that he had, which, you know, none of us are experts on any of these disorders, but
It's true.
No.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it
So-
leads him to like bullying like a small child, like at
Yeah.
his, Bruce Wayne and strangling Alfred and the whole thing. I mean, assuming that happened. As again, like now I'm like, did any of these things happen?
Now I'm confused. Now I'm confused, Devin. He's like, did it happen?
But he
Like,
was
it would
nice-
make
but he
sense
was
why
nice
he
to
was
Bruce,
so
though.
mad at Bruce, because he got to see like what he thought like his life could have been, but his
Right.
theoretical father like abandoned him and his mother, and he's just like, hold on, wait a minute, because it's like right after he reads that letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you say bullying the kid, though, so like I don't know, did I miss this or something? Because like he does the magic trick for him and everything, and then he does that. I honestly think that's just his weird. Like I don't think in his mind that's bullying. He's just trying to make him smile because he
That's
thinks
true.
that's what affection is supposed to be. Because that's what his mom always demanded of him.
Smiling.
He was
is
always
like the
really
thing.
nice to kids, which I found
Yeah.
interesting. Because I think that's because even though he couldn't remember the abuse he suffered, he was trying to, be that person to like random kids that he never had in his life.
Is he ever really mean to anyone who's not like rich? I mean, really, he's not.
No.
Except maybe the guy who worked at the clown college place.
The one who gave him the gun?
His
Yeah.
court mandated freaking therapist. He
Yeah,
absolutely
he
mean to
wasn't-
her.
Yeah, he wasn't very nice to her.
No, I'm
True.
talking
It's
about the
almost
very
like
end of the
anyone
movie.
who like disenfranchises him. Whereas like he did have the one coworker that was kind to him, and he's just
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
nah, I ain't gonna hurt you. You can
Yeah.
go.
They're very, very, very much drawing that distinction between who he sees as a decent human being and who he doesn't. And he's like, you were always nice to me. And he let him go.
And he was like on board with Murray up until he showed the clip of him at the comedy club, and he's like humiliating him in
Yeah.
front of like his whole audience.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, maybe I'm not gonna like kill myself. He just makes a decision. He's like,
Like maybe I'll just kill you instead. And I felt like that's like the most autistic I've ever felt is like when I'm watching his stand up, even though just a couple minutes, I laughed. Like I don't know, like it was it was funny
Me proving my
because it's so
Rams test
awkward
results
and
correct.
uncomfortable. Yeah, like maybe because I don't know, maybe because
I
it was uncomfortable. But
so uncomfortable through most of this movie. And I actually absolutely cannot watch a lot of discomforting things. So I have to I had to fast forward through it and then come back to it, if that makes sense, so that the tension was gone
yeah,
in the movie, because I could, it was so bad. I mean, and that just, he's a great actor, and that just plays to that whole, he's a great actor. Everything about that character was just super awkward and weird and uncomfortable.
I think that's why it was funny to me, just because it
Yeah.
makes me sound like a
like
dick, but
hashtag
it's just
relatable.
yeah, it's just like,
Some
oh,
people
sorry.
absolutely love awkward humor.
Yeah,
My-
I like awkward humor.
Andy
too.
Samberg type,
My Schadenfreude is very, very low, and I can't watch awkward humor. I can't watch pranks. I can't watch a lot of that stuff without feeling sympathetic towards the people that are being embarrassed, even if they're not feeling that embarrassment, it's
Yeah.
bad. So
My partner's like that. He can't watch the first season of The Office. He'll just like he just can't do it. He's like, no,
That's-
no.
I've never watched The Office because of the fact that I tried to start at the first season and I was like, I can't do this. It's too much. Yeah, it's like it's too bad. And a lot of people are like, how do you not like The Office? And I'm like, because I can't.
It's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well,
So,
oh, go ahead.
just one more thing that I wrote down before it falls out of my head completely. Why I wrote this down. I talked to you when we were because you started watching it right around the same time I did. You were rewatching it, Evan, at the same time I was watching it. Pagalagosi, the opera, is the original trope for the sad clown and then descendant into murder and madness, right?
Okay.
And this actually follows almost plot by plot that exact opera. And I don't know if you guys noticed that at all.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I read something about that, but yeah,
Mhm.
I can appreciate that. I like when they take something like that and reformulate it into a more modern story. That's it's another point in their favor, I guess.
Yeah, again, awesome director, really good acting.
Yeah.
Sorry to pull the sad clown trope off, unless you're going to pull short of the punches and not actually have the murder happen. So,
Yeah.
My mind was on Juggalos the whole time.
Oh, the poor
Like them
Juggalos.
as like a progressive force.
I love them.
so hold on, because ICP is very much not an incel group.
No.
That's another one of those like misunderstood groups.
They just want to drink Faygo and like they don't abide racism or bigotry and they just want to have a good time. And
I didn't know that they did their makeup to like confuse like facial recognition devices. Like their clown makeup is done in that way. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I like that.
Love that for them.
And I bet a lot of their fans are like right wingers too, which I think is no, they're not.
No,
Okay.
I am a fan of ICP. No.
Well, okay. Well, I didn't say you.
No, but I'm saying like as a general
about killing the police. So
Juggalos literally are like, let's get those ACAB and yeah. They very much are not on the right wing. As a matter of fact, if they find out they have real patriots as their fans, they tend to encourage things to happen to them that are not quite nice.
Fascists are not invited to the Dark Carnival.
No, they are not. Well, I mean, they are, but as exhibits.
Yeah, no, they don't get to participate.
That makes me respect them like immensely before, where I like kind of had no opinion whatsoever, but now
I need to share a couple of songs with you, Evan, because you will definitely enjoy it.
Well, when I was in camp in like 8th grade or something like that, it was when the album like The Great Malenko came out, and I actually remember listening to that album a lot then.
I know that whole album by heart.
Listening.
just to give you a rough idea.
Nice.
Yeah, you're only a couple years younger than me, Evan.
Yeah, I remember they also they had to like pull the album because there was like a part of it where someone was committing self-harm on the album, and they had to like pull the album or something.
Yeah, it was on the voicemails.
We've gotten off. A little.
Well, so when I was talking about Juggalos, this is what happens.
Yeah. I will say.
But I get what you mean by that, Ryan. That it could come off that way. Although I don't think the Juggalos would invite this particular iteration of the Joker to come hang out. Just standard ruling there.
Fair enough. If he wasn't apolitical, if he was principled, I mean, anything's possible.
Well, it's funny you said that, because the thing I was going to say was they ask him when he's on the Murray Show, and he says like, "I'm not political," and I feel like that's like a pretty interesting line to say, because he maybe not be political because he doesn't really seem to understand or follow or have any concept of, it's like people who are maybe a leftist and they don't realize it, or they could be an anarchist, or they could be whatever, and they don't understand the politics behind the things they think.
He can like recognize like injustices happening in society, and he knows that like the rich people like don't get it; they're disconnected with the material conditions.
Exactly.
He doesn't
know the terminology. Yeah,
right.
That's just real life.
he doesn't view that, because a lot of people don't think politics has to do with a direct relation to how you are governed and how your living conditions are. Most people think politics, they think the presidential shit that they see on TV. So like when people say I'm not political, it's exactly what y'all were saying, that it hasn't developed any kind of sense of justice whatsoever. He just knows that the people who screwed him over the most needed to be murdered in his
Yeah.
crazy sick mind.
It's too bad that Marxist.org wasn't created yet for him to log in
Yeah, no.
and check out some literature.
I think there's some. I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Oh no, I was. I was gonna say, like, when people say that, I think what you were saying, yes, like it's that they see like the theater of it, like with the presidential debates and the fucking million campaign commercial. I lived in Pennsylvania until recently, so the Oz and what's his face ones were just like nonstop. They see that and they think that's what it means, but it's also the fact that no matter who's there, their conditions don't improve. You know, for the people who are suffering and always have been, it doesn't matter who's sitting in that seat. So what they think of as politics is literally just, here's the new boss, same. Yes, here's the new boss, same as the old boss. Shit isn't changing for me. So I have so little room in my head because of all the bullshit I have to deal with every day, just trying to feed myself and my family and keep my shit together. I don't have time for that.
Right.
You know? I think that's a really common thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Right. We're indoctrinated to not think of politics as something that we should be directly involved with, because when we do that, then the power dynamic shifts if more people are involved.
Yeah.
So that's it. And I hear I'm not political too from a lot of like centrist people as well. I hear it from people who just do not want to engage in any kind of real conversation when it comes to the material conditions of the human beings around them.
Yeah, because they're exhausted.
Well, they blame like the rich people.
But,
like they're blaming like not Bruce Wayne, like the Wayne family as one of the causes or the scapegoat, or because they're holding signs at these rallies that say like kill rich people, basically.
Right, and it's because Bruce Wayne's father is running for mayor. He's like, hold on, like you can't exploit me and then also be like within political, like make laws to
it's like if like
me.
Bloomberg was like mayor of New York. It's like, okay, you're a billionaire and you're gonna like tell me I can't drink soda? Like, how about you fix something for real? But no.
How about we clean up the trash first, and then we can discuss. All of it can be blamed on the trash strike. That's it.
Yeah.
Cut and scene.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing too. Is like they throughout it they're showing the the downfall of Gotham, like the culmination being like the riot. I mean, I immediately was gonna say riots. You could say whatever you want to call
it. It's just chaos. Like it was chaotic.
Yeah.
They weren't really destroying buildings, really. They're like harassing the rich people coming out of the fundraiser, and they're like smashing cars, and they're angry, and they don't have like a direction for the anger other than like.
Are we supposed to be upset by that though? Like, was that like the intention of that, to show how crazy it is? And then like when Bruce Wayne's parents get killed in front of him, like was I supposed to feel bad? I just want to know.
Yeah, because I didn't.
Because I don't.
Like that framed the Waynes dying in the perfect light. I feel like, because it was like, oh,
yeah,
you deserved it.
Yeah. I mean, the kid doesn't. Like, you could feel bad for the kid, obviously, because, he's a literal child. He doesn't have any control over this. That sucks, seeing your parents get killed. But, like, yeah, I think that's the best way I've ever seen it.
Little shit that, like, he's like, man, these poor people, fuck them. That's what he grows up and he does.
I mean, if it's like one more shot, and like there's no more franchise. Bye-bye. See you later, Batman. Right?
If only. I mean, sorry.
But
now it's Joker all the time. Deal with it.
I mean, if like, I mean, Alfred gets all the money, right? Like that's right. Who's like the guy in line. Like
Alfred is a class traitor, though. Fuck Alfred.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah. He's like a little too invested in protecting Mr. Wayne.
And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Alfred also isn't, even before he worked for the Waynes, he isn't really like poor. It's not like he was like he was already wealthy. It's like, I'm gonna be wealthy and just help this other wealthy family kind of
Well,
situation, right?
yeah, like trained butlers are not poor human beings. They have to know like specific decorum things, and
Class, like their class, the way they
they're
talk.
trained. Like they have school and all kinds of stuff to actually do his job. Like, but he
Yeah.
is kind of a class traitor in that aspect of he's a servant, but it's again like the overboss. He is the overboss of the household for the most part
I
because
mean,
he runs the rest of it.
Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, he enables his behavior in like the other versions of like the Batman universe,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He
Especially
like
like the
participates in raising Bruce Wayne, and like he had the perfect opportunity just to like raise and be like a little bit conscious of like the
Anybody
world
else?
around him outside of like his beautiful manor that could house like his fort could have housed like 2 families,
Yeah.
but like the house itself, like he grew up in a manor. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and you never see the other people working there because he's like the household manager. It's not just Alfred there. There's no way there's one staff member.
No.
He's the only one you see because of his proximity to Bruce, but nobody else.
well. Do you think that the mother actually worked for Bruce Wayne, the Wayne family?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she did, and she had like a mental break of some kind. Maybe
Yes.
maybe she got fired from her job.
I can't remember what exactly it said, but it was like she adopted Arthur, and then after that, she had like a schizophrenic break or something. But it was after she had adopted him while she was still working for Wayne, and that's why she ended up in Arkham and losing her job.
Well, it strikes me that if there actually had been some kind of relationship between her and the father, if that part was true, he put her away to like essentially he could have done what he was a billionaire. He could have helped her.
Well,
But
and
instead, he doesn't want to help anyone.
yeah, they addressed that too. They said that he could have fixed that paperwork, and he could have fixed the paperwork to say whatever he wanted it to say because he has so much money and power in Gotham.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing I was wondering. Is that like, are we supposed to believe that? I guess it's supposed to be kind of a question mark because of the power and the influence that he has. It very well could have been that she was telling the truth, or it could have been that she was delusional and made the entire thing up. I think that there's no way to know.
I mean, it also is it impossible that they fabricated the fact that he was even adopted? Like that was the thing that was created.
That's what it would have been if he fabricated the paperwork. Like if he did all that to silence her to protect himself.
Yeah, he's got like 30 gardeners. I'm sure he could like hire someone to like forge a few documents or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Penny seems very lucid when she is telling Arthur
Yeah.
through the wall. For like the first time, she is like really with it. She's like, "No, this is what happened," which
Yeah.
is very different than her mannerisms before. She's like, "I gotta write a letter," but like she's very clear with what she is saying. So I have no idea.
And she didn't write that for him to read.
No.
Like she just wanted him to mail it for her.
So
And she's been mailing him letters forever.
So it would be interesting if this director wasn't specifically about making sure that this didn't actually branch out to the rest of the DC universe. Well, some of the darker comics that DC has put out in the past would have made like this timeline of events and plot line make even more sense if you think about the fact that Batman's actually also mentally ill, and that he has that whole like persona, almost some people say it's schizophrenia, some people say it's DID. They're not really sure. There's a lot of similar symptoms between the two, but that's the whole Batman manifestation is not really, it's like part of a psychosis. And if they were actual siblings, that makes a lot of sense and how it manifests, and it could be really cool and dark, but I don't think they're ever going to do that, which would be sad.
No.
They touched on that a little bit in
the next movie comes out.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it the Val Kilmer Batman that they touch on that a little bit? Well, it's when he's it's with with Nicole Kidman, I think.
Yeah.
And
He's like stuck in the
yeah,
right.
and he keeps having these weird like visions of like a bat in the dark and stuff.
And
And
Michael Keaton too. Like
yeah,
they touch on it a little bit, mentality wise. Also, the Dark Knight cartoon
Hmm.
and Batman Beyond do a really good job of talking about some of his issues.
Batman Beyond is so good.
Batman Beyond is so good.
I put a note at the end of mine, but I can't remember when this happens. Is there like a big speech at the end? Is it when he's on the Murray show that he's giving like a speech?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about like the elite and like everyone is awful. Was that the last part where he's on Murray? Was that before
Yeah,
he
he's like,
kills
"You're
him?
awful, and you're gonna get what you fucking deserve."
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was right. I mean, it's
Bang, bang, bang.
I mean, you said before, Rye, that they're already having protests. Partly, it's like for Wayne,
Mhm.
and then it does seem possible, and it makes sense to me. If people were watching this TV show live, I like pictured him as like being like Jay Leno. I mean, he kind of looked like him a little bit, of like, you know, a crappy late night TV show. But people are watching it and they see this happen, and it like triggers something to them. I mean, is that what you're supposed? Is that what you make of it? Is it that they already were like the fuse was already lit, and this was like or no, it wasn't lit. It was I don't know the
It was in
metaphor.
like the process. Like they knew like everything was happening, and like you can see there's a lot more solidarity like on the subway when like the police are trying to or the detectives are chasing Arthur, and then they start the fight, and then the police like shoot somebody, and they're like, "Nah," and they just like beat the hell out of them, and they're just like, "Well, it's all of us versus you two." So
Yeah.
I think there was a lot more building behind the scenes, and I really wish they would have showed more of what was happening there because I definitely think there's a lot more organization than the movie let on.
Oh, absolutely. So,
At one point, they're protesting outside of the opera house or the theater or wherever, and that's when a couple of guys pull this cop over the barriers, and they start beating him up, and that's when Arthur is able to like sneak in and put on the bellhop outfit or whatever the hell it is, like the theater attendant, the usher thing, and he goes in and confronts him in the bathroom. So yeah, they were definitely. I mean, people were already communicating and organizing these protests and stuff well before the whole Murray thing went down. So
yeah.
we only see snippets of it because most of it's happening like around Arthur. He's not involved, but you could see like the glee in his face as he's walking through, seeing all these people in the clown makeup, and he's like, okay, like, yeah, this is kind of for me, but that's not why I'm here. So, you know.
Yeah. So in backstage, they actually debate whether or not they're even going to put him on because there is a large protest going on right then.
Yeah.
Which is why I put into question whether or not those people knew that he was the leader or not, or if that actually even happened, they pulled him out of the cop car or any of that stuff. Because in the 80s, you didn't have instant gratification, and if you were out in the street protesting, you didn't see the late night TV show.
Yeah,
That's true.
Because you were out in the streets protesting. You don't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
You have no way to know that guy, that one guy in that one cop car is actually the guy who killed the 3 guys in the subway. You would find out about it the next day in the paper.
Yeah.
Unless
That's
they all
true.
started covering it so quickly after that, and like that was back when they used to have like TVs in the window displays when they're in like a major metropolitan area. So who knows if they have like I don't know
Because
if they had like
they're all
big
on the street
screens.
already protesting, and they like somehow.
Yeah. So it's kind of iffy on how all of them knew who he was enough to be able to pull him from the cop car.
Yeah.
And let him, like, that whole dancing scene and all that stuff. But
I have a feeling when the sequel's out, we'll
they'll
maybe get a
explain it a
clearer
bit more.
idea. Yeah, maybe we'll get a clearer idea of exactly, you know, how much really happened and how much was in his head.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I just assume that it's like going to start up with him in Arkham and like how I'm guessing how he escapes and.
I mean, the way it leaves off is him like assuming this happened too, because then we're getting into like American Psycho territory where it's like, did he actually do any of this shit, or is it just in his head? But like when he's talking to the therapist and he's laughing, he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't get it," and then he starts singing the song, and he's walking out into the hallway, and there's bloody footprints, and they're just running across.
Yeah.
But a couple times, it's like he's running from the same direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what
Yeah.
the fuck happened there? Like,
Yeah, it's definitely filmed in such a way that it's really difficult to differentiate because he can't anymore.
exactly. Yeah. I
And
do like that. I like how they pull us into his frame of mind in that sense. That was well done.
Lady Gaga is Harley Quinn.
I was saying to Evan, like I'm excited for that. She's she should be good. I like her.
Yeah, I like Lady Gaga. She's a good actress. Like
Yeah.
it's surprising how good she is.
Yeah.
So, and I liked her in American Horror Story, so we'll see how violent they get her to be in the upcoming.
That was one of the only seasons I haven't seen. I gave up on that show a little while ago. I had to pull out. But like,
She's
yeah, she is good. She's very good.
So yeah, I still don't know if I like this movie or not, Evan.
That's okay.
I still don't know. Thank you for recommending it, and I definitely understand why you did, because I should watch it a few more times for sure. Just to think more on because spotting the delusion was easier in Fight Club because it was right there in front of you, even if it was single frame. This one is way different as far as the descent into madness is concerned, and it's very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Not comfortable though.
I mean, I think Joaquin Phoenix does a good. I mean, he's a great actor, of course, but he makes you uncomfortable. Like, and not just in this movie, and like many of the movies he's in, he's like he always has that weird way of, I don't know how to describe it.
Like his stage presence, I kind of understand it due to what the film industry did to his entire family, but like they definitely typecast him a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate this movie. If I can't say that I like love this movie, like I can appreciate what they were trying to do, even if like many of these movies, there's this unfortunate group of people who take the wrong thing from not just this movie, from many movies. They just, as we say, I think you said, Rod, like the media literacy of most people is unfortunately very
like
bad.
this film could be a really good stepping stone for like your centrist friends who like don't know a lot about like class dynamics and what exactly that entails. You can give them like a piece of like fiction to like be able to view it through, and then they can then apply it to their own lives. So I mean, it can have a utility, I suppose.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah, I wonder. The person, a friend of mine who told me I had ruined the movie RoboCop because I like made it political. He's like, I always thought that was just a fun action movie. Like, what the fuck were you watching?
Are you watching the same movie I was watching?
So I wonder if he's seen this movie. He stopped. He told me he stopped listening. He didn't specifically say this, but he hinted like, I'm not listening to your podcast anymore. I'm sorry. He's like very liberal. I don't talk to him that often anyway, but
ignorance is bliss, I guess. Like, I mean, I can't blame him. I was a lot happier when I was more liberal. Now I know too much. I'm like, oh god.
You're like, oh,
the world is burning. Great.
Yeah, it must be. But I mean, honestly, it must be nice to just like not care about these things. Like, if you're comfortable and you're fine, like, what?
Right.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot more peaceful, right?
Yeah.
Not really knowing what the hell's going on.
I mean, I think that's why you would term it as like you're being like radicalized to leftists, is because it is radicalizing. It's destroys like your frame of all the things you've been taught.
Your reference points are different.
Because I think that's why people come away from this movie and similar media with the complete wrong takeaway. Because to think of it otherwise, to think of it as, well, this is a person who has been just beaten down and abandoned, not by society as such, but by capitalism and by the systems that are supposed to be in place to help him, but really just end up relegating him to the sidelines and like, becoming more frustrated and radicalized in a different way. To think of it in that way forces you to accept that you're just everything you thought, everything you've accepted as reality and truth is just it's wrong. And that's really tough for people to do. So, if you're already in the frame of mind that like, well, it's not, it's like a couple people, it's a couple things. It's this one person. It's my parent. It's this guy who's my dad, but he says he's not my dad, even though he's my dad. He's to blame. Like, it doesn't matter if Bruce Wayne is his father, really, because in a very real sense, he has a normal, just human duty. He should have a drive to use what he has to help people. But instead, he's using it to gain more power. Like, how expensive, I don't know about 80s money, but he's a billionaire. So he's using his resources to run for mayor to get even more power. In a real sense, he's responsible for everybody in that city, because he wouldn't have what he has without them propping him up.
Mm-hmm.
He could snap his finger and give Arthur back his mental health, his prescription drugs. Obviously, that's not going to fix the problem, but at least it's like gives him something,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People
Like,
are
if
just
he were to
propaganda.
give like the
event.
workers, like his workers, like just give them the means of production, like how different Gotham would have turned out.
Yeah.
It's his accident. So the Joker's accidental narcissism is what leads the people of Gotham to actually stand up for what they believe in. And the saddest part about it is inevitably it creates the downfall of the working class, because Batman will just beat them senseless if they do anything outlandish,
Yeah.
20 years later.
He's just another arm of the police without even the baseline minimal level of accountability they have.
Yeah.
He
So
wears a
they
mask
kill
and nobody
Batman.
knows who he is. Yeah.
So, like, you start to see class unity with the people when they finally have a symbol of hope, which is a sad symbol of hope when they figure out who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if Wayne Enterprises, instead of being this mega, piece of shit company, whatever they're producing, it's like different in different iterations, like weapons or whatever. I mean, if it was turned around to make the city, like, they could have built orphanages for kids. They could offer food programs. They could just become like the Black Panther Party and just offer lunches and I don't know, whatever you want to, whatever it could be. Just like the amount of mutual aid you could do with billions of dollars in Gotham.
And this is the thing too. The fanboys always come back with, and I know they will in your comment section, Evan, so I apologize, but they always end up saying, well, no, because the Waynes, the Wayne company pays their workers really well and they have amazing benefits and everybody does really well. Okay, well, I'll tell them, the same thing that I say to my mother about Milton Hershey, which is that, yeah, okay, he did a lot of charity and they do a lot of philanthropy, but they wouldn't have to do so much if they just gave people the actual value of their labor, if they were paying them accordingly, if they didn't hoard all of those resources, they wouldn't have so much to give away and they wouldn't need to in the first place. People wouldn't have to rely on charity.
For sure.
They just had what they deserved.
I just saw something where some big corporation spent like multiple $1 million running ad campaigns for some like $50,000 donation they made to some charity. It's like they spent millions to convince you they're good by doing something that means nothing.
Right.
It's just they're just like charity is just
marketing, baby.
Yeah, laundering their reputation. That's all it is. So marketing.
No,
yes.
There's that's that whole what is it? Something altruism where people get wealthy intentionally so that they can spend it appropriately in order to get the most benefit rather than just helping the material conditions of the people near them. It's like, I can donate to this charity that gives out all these smallpox vaccines, or I can just feed some people. I'm going to do that instead. And they justify it in their head as it being the greater good.
Bill Gates.
Yeah.
It's like the white savior complex with like missionary work or like colonialism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to pay like thousands of dollars so I can fly to Africa with my church and then build them a school, but they have to listen to me like proselytize on the way rather than like spending that money and like giving it to people here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe just like focus on your local, like, do you really need to fly there and like do all of that?
Yeah.
It's for the gram. They gotta take some photos.
Or like the shoe company, I forget which one, but it's the one that you get a pair of shoes and they send a pair of shoes to a kid in Africa or something, and it's like there's people in those places that make shoes and they put them out of business.
Yep. And
they
it's not
feed their
they're like, please stop sending us shoes. We don't need the shoes. We need to eat. We can't eat rubber. Thank you.
Exactly. Or your Super Bowl T-shirts that are for the team that lost. Like,
Maybe
no,
put
thank
like
you.
half
We're
of that energy into supporting like anti-imperialist legislation and like like BDS projects. Like we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah. Now I'm just sitting here mad about the fact that the Waynes probably spent millions of dollars that they could have actually helped the wages of the garbage people to begin with in order to continue the production. Instead, he put it into political campaign ads.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
So there's buttons and billboards and fucking commercials and everything.
T-shirts.
Well, that's the full circle. It's like he could have just paid the garbage men. There would have been no strike. They wouldn't have been angry in the streets. They would
Right.
have
Could have said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I have these billions of dollars in '80s money," which is like, I don't even know. I
Some of the
don't
wealthiest
know
people in the world.
if I can help it, but like that's a shit ton of money, right? Could have just said, "I'll subsidize it because I have all this fuck you money. Let me go ahead and pay the sanitation workers."
I actually care about this city. I paid for that. Vote for me. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
In reality, he probably would have like bought the sanitization like company and like fired them all
Privatized it.
and then hired a
Right.
bunch of
Non-union
scabs.
workers, right? And so fire all of them. Hire non-union workers.
Let's
Pay
be
them
real.
way below.
You would have gotten robots to do it if it was like now. He'd just be like the
Literally.
little robot dogs like going down the street, like
Oh.
picking up the trash.
Oh no, the robot dogs, the law enforcement robot dogs.
Those creep me out in the most post-apocalyptic way you can imagine. Like every time I see an article about those, I'm like, we are so doomed. Like, why?
They're so creepy.
Have you guys seen? There's a Black Mirror episode, completely off base of the Joker here, but there's a Black Mirror episode about a robotic dog that literally chases a woman down and murders her. Like, and we just made those.
I never see that in real life.
We
I'm
just
gonna
made
punch that
those.
motherfucker. Like he's going dead.
Why is this happening?
I saw some like it was like a video of showing where on those specific models like the weak points are. Like, oh, go for like the joint between the back legs, and it's like disabled. It's like
Doing the Lord's work.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love that.
if
Yeah.
only I could like shoot a bow or something that could actually make that possible to like hit
So-
the robot.
I have a research team over here. Apparently, they wanted to let us know that $1 billion in 80s money is close to $4 billion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So he's
Thank
got
you,
like
research
10,
team.
20, 30,
You're welcome.
a lot of Benjamins.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Do you ever go on that Spend Bill Gates's Money website? You ever do that?
No, but now I want to because that sounds awesome.
It
please
makes you
do.
sick to your stomach.
Yeah, it's insane. Like you go on and you just pick a bunch of things, NFL teams, fucking yachts and stuff. You will spend a large portion of your life trying to spend all of his money, and it's not possible to do. You could spend $10,000 a day for the rest of your life and never spend $1 billion. Like, what?
And we have unhoused people here in this country. We do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna head to Lowe's so I can go get my guillotine materials. Oh, catch on the flip side.
I'm gonna start fixing the marinade, right?
There's a guy on TikTok building a guillotine. I think he's done now, actually. I haven't checked it in a while.
Oh, good.
Someone put one in
I
front of
need the
Bezos'
schematic.
house.
Love that for him.
we
In Minecraft, of course. Like,
we have built we haven't built a spec, but we have started designing a catapult. So that'll be fun.
Hmm.
are we catapulting the rich?
Yeah, so they can compost easier. Yeet.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's kind of a perfect ending for what the Joker could
What a
have done.
segue.
It's a nice
The
little way to
Joker
sign
could
off,
have
yeah.
the Joker could have built a guillotine and brought it on stage at Murray's on TV and just
That would have been
paraded them
much
through.
sillier and more
March.
jokey.
Marched out all those rich people, just
Could have had like little like a target underneath. Like if it gets in a certain spot, like you win like a free meal. I don't know.
No,
That
Rick,
would
like these balloon things that like you throw the balloon and give the audience an opportunity to participate. Once the target hits, then yes,
That would be a Mark Hamill Joker thing. I
that
think
would
that's
yes, that would be a Mark Hamill Joker. That would be an original Joker idea.
love him.
I'm gonna have to do a little bleeping of this part, but that's okay.
Aw,
No. no one. But it's in Minecraft, like you said. It's
In
In
Minecraft,
Minecraft,
yeah.
we're eating the rich.
But wait,
I got a
wasn't the
server.
guy who leaked the documents? Wasn't that in a Minecraft Discord or something? We got to choose a new thing. I think. In the Sims. In the Sims, remove the pool ladder for the rich.
We invited them to a really rad pool party and just removed the ladder.
If this doesn't put all of us on a feds list, if it hasn't already.
It's funny. I was just thinking, like, oh, I don't have to release this. I'm like, this is on YouTube right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
We are live currently. Like,
Well,
This
none
is
of you have any
America.
names
Freedom
on
of
there.
speech.
I should have worn my Juggalo makeup for this, and then we would have been all
See?
good.
Ah, shit, yeah.
I wore my ICP shirt. That would have been. We need to plan better next time.
You could post a Juggalo makeup tutorial. There you go.
I don't think I would be the one for that, but I could try. Would come up pretty shitty.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing, Evan.
My Halloween costume for 2023.
Perfect.
What year is it? But
2023.
yes. All right. Well, I think we've killed it.
Did we?
Well, not yet. We will.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. Anyway,
Not yet.
thank you to you all, Costume Whimsy, Rye, and Smirk Gently.
Thanks for
It's
having
been
me.
great. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. It was nice to meet you guys. Or I've already met most of you, but it was nice to meet you.
Nice
Smirk.
to meet you too. Yeah.
Well, you've
All
been
right.
listening to Left of the Projector, and do not try any of this at home.
Only Minecraft.
But you could try Juggalo makeup if you'd like.
Oh yeah. Well, if you also don't mind hanging out for like 1 minute after I close this to
Oh,
to
yeah,
just give us the audio, but I'm gonna